necessarily tidily fit in the dual-party system now find a place to have some level of involvement. And I think I would say it's not just the influence and opinion formers. I agree that's important, it always has been and it remains so, but it's actually having people who find like-minded people online, which has been one of the great things, you know, Google your friends or Google yourself some friends. The other thing, I'll just make a quick point that to follow on, and that is also, we talk about blogs, but you know, I may be the editor of blogs, but I'm thinking about a lot of things other than blogs. You know, when you look up there, Geriatric 1927, that was, you know, an old guy on YouTube. So you have Flickr, where people are posting up pictures of, you know, blown up Dell laptops. You know, you've got, going back to YouTube, there were political groups talking about the issue of net neutrality in the United States. They found it difficult to get the messages in the mainstream media, so they had explainers on YouTube, which actually were the most popular videos on YouTube, as Technorati noted, which is how I saw them. So, I mean, you're starting to see, I think, when you talk about blogs, you need to think about it more in peer-to-peer communication, social media, and larger trends, not just a specific technology.
Jackie, Neville.
Oh, thanks. Just two quick points, actually. First is something Ian mentioned earlier. You talked about UK's 3 to 4 years behind the US, and I'm assuming you specifically mean in political blogging, because I certainly don't see that in business blogging. Yeah. Business blogging, I'd say maybe a year. My experience in talking to companies in particular is that the questions being asked today are different ones than a year ago, and I'm sure that's the same political blogging. It's no longer what are blogs, it's how do we use them. But I'm also seeing more of an interest in podcasting, audio and video than blogging within organizations. And in fact, I could think of a dozen companies in the UK who are doing some interesting experimenting privately, internally with a lot of this social media. And that's rapid. So I think those changes are accelerating, which leads to my question, which is, this is terrific stuff you've presented, the data on this research. What I'm really interested in is what you have to say on trends. Where's this all going? And I don't mean it's going to increase by next year. You can guess that. But specifics on some of the detail you've got in here on the individual European countries. Where do you see change happening that's kind of marked, as opposed to, you know, this percentages will increase or whatever? What's your research telling you that point to as far ahead as 18 months, let's say, and as close as 6 months? I mean, the kind of 6 to 24 months, where's all this going? I'd like to get your insight on that.
Yeah, thank you. That would be on a business plan, wouldn't it?
I'm going to blog this, by the way. Whatever you say, David, I'll blog it, okay?
Yeah, I know you would. I mean, you know, the good thing about research is it gives you a snapshot picture of where you are. It's very difficult to extrapolate trends. I mean, the question before about, you know, how are corporates taking this on, very nervously, as what I said before, I don't see a lot of them taking this on at the speed that they were in the US for quite a while yet. I still think that, you know, if you look at organisations in Europe at board level, we are much more conservative about communications than they are in the US. I think it was an easier cultural bridge to divide in the bridge in the US than it has been in European markets, and particularly in Germany. I mean, if you look at, you know, the blog experience in Germany, the number and the influence of those blogs, it's tiny, it's fractional. I mean, the UK, I think we're closer to the US experience in that in many ways, and France as well. But I think it will be longer here to translate into the sorts of campaigns and ways in which social and new media is being used corporately in the US. It will be a long while before we get to that place in Europe, or longer than we thought.
But you'd agree, it probably only take one incident, right? One bad incident to bring everybody along.
Yeah, and we were talking before. I mean, there's some amazingly brave things being done out there, and I guess one of the good things for us in Europe and the UK is that, you know, when you see good examples of things happening in the US, our corporates, you know, will follow. I was saying the other day that I don't know if any of you've seen McDonald's CSR site. Incredibly brave CSR site. They've got 4 or 5 people on that blogging, and they've got pictures of cattle being led into a slaughterhouse. You know, how much do they want a conversation? Yeah. And I think that sort of thing will raise the barrier. But I just think our organisations here are more nervous about embracing this control versus credibility dichotomy.
Just at the back there.
On the subject of trust, I can see how it's a very attractive concept to look at peer-to-peer as generating and also carrying a lot more trust than one-to-many communication as classic media channels would do. And therefore being very, very interesting also in commercial terms for PR. Now, most of the last 90 minutes was spent on A-listers and tip of the iceberg and top of the pyramid and establishment. Now, isn't there an inherent danger there that as you know, the more prominent bloggers become and the more opinion-leading bloggers become, the more they are in danger of tipping over from blogosphere to traditional media sphere and then losing that advantage in trust. Is that a realistic view on things? And if it is, what can you do to maintain your advantage if you want?
Peter.
Because one of the great things about the blogosphere is it's self-cleaning. If you are a blogger and it appears that you are selling out or somehow changing your brand or what you're doing, you will get called on that so quickly, even more than in the mainstream media where your audience knows you and knows your voice. So I think there's actually a pretty strong mechanism that as you become an influential blogger, you tend to become more responsible to your audience. And it's true that, you know, a top blogger is kind of indistinguishable from mainstream media, except he doesn't need a publisher. But as you and many new people rise up all the time in any given conversation. We do sometimes lose sight of the fact that it's as interesting to look down the long tail as it is up. But I think the concept that if you somehow become popular, you sell out. You only sell out if you're a sellout, and you'll get called on it really quickly. And so it's a pretty self-cleansing mechanism. I mean, I know when I've done things that people didn't like, I heard about it within nanoseconds, and I had to respond pretty quickly. And I think anybody who's kind of had the experience of blogback understands innately that good feedback's a good idea, because you experience it once and you kind of, it's like, you get vaccinated, you know what to do.
Okay, one more question.
Two. We've got two more.
Okay, no, Sue. Oh, okay, James from Microsoft. Oh, sorry, Sue first.
I just kind of really wanted to pull back a bit and say a lot of the stuff that we're discussing here is part of an overall trend. There is a major change in the way that people get information, whether that is news, whether it's political information, whether it's consumer information, in that the accepted sources of the past are becoming a lot less interesting to people. So an example of this is, okay, my personal blog is has every characteristic of a blog that really shouldn't be successful. I mean, I talk a lot of pointless rubbish, but I get a huge amount of visitors. So I get 250,000 to 350,000 page views a month. And every now and again, I will post something that is relevant to somebody somewhere. So if I do a review of, say, a dishwasher, which I have done, then people will just Google for this dishwasher when they're doing their research to find out what to buy. They will find my post saying that the Zanussi timeline is rubbish, and then they will leave a comment saying, thanks, I was going to buy one of these and now I'm not. So we need to be careful that we don't start to stereotype what we think is happening. People are looking in a lot of disparate areas. They're not just looking on political blogs for political opinion. They're not just looking on consumer blogs for consumer news. They will look, they have amazingly powerful tools to find information wherever it is, and they will seek it out and they will find it. And I think that there is a risk that if we focus too tightly on trying to categorize and type bloggers and information and behaviors, that we miss the bigger picture, which is that it's all out there now.
Mm-hmm. James.
I'm a huge fan of blogging and work with Microsoft, so we understand the power and how you can get burnt with blogging. But the question I really got actually is probably for Nick and Kevin, in terms of blogging is a new medium for newspapers and broadcast. How do you see that affecting your current older models of more traditional media? Because you've got newspapers with declining numbers and stuff like that. How do you see blogging playing a part in that?
That really is a $64,000 question. And the question for the BBC is, can we, a mainstream media organisation of a very peculiar thought, with a very particular kind of culture and a very odd and unique way of doing things, can we adapt for this new model?